Hello, my name is Brandon Soileau, and today we'll be discussing the Geismar Olefin plant incident that took place in Geismar, Louisiana on June 13, 2013, resulted in 2 fatalities and 167 reported injuries. Today we're going to be looking at how Williams' process safety management program, or lack thereof, kind of led to this incident. So just an incident overview. Again, it took place on June 13, 2013. The Williams plant produces ethylene and propylene for the use of creating plastics and antifreeze. On the morning of the incident, it was noted that they had some flow issues with their reboilers, which worked in pairs, with one being out of service and the other one operating. Again, there were some restrictions in flow in the one that was operating, so they felt they needed to shut that down to have it cleaned out, which is a pretty routine, normal problem. Often seen because of the water used to heat up the propane in the vessel. Often contains some tars that can collect in the piping and restrict the flow. So later on, after that morning meeting, one of the operators went and turned on the paired reboiler that had not been in use. Apparently, it had been out of service for over a year. So he went on and turned it on and went about his business. Unbeknownst to them at the time, the reboiler was completely full of propane and began to heat up and quickly overpressure, which led to an explosion. And as you can see in the photo, caused quite a bit of explosion. In subsequent photos, you also see the damage to the plant. Before we move on too far, and just the reason why we later on find out why the vessel was allowed to overpressure, is because at some point there were manual valves put downstream of the reboilers that prevented the flow from accessing their safety relief valves. And we'll discuss into why and how of that further. On this slide, we see the 14 different PSM elements for OSHA's process safety management system. The highlighted ones here: process hazards analysis, operating procedures, pre-startup safety review, and management of change, are the 4 which had the biggest contributing factors to the Geismar Williams plant incident. The contributing PSM elements, again, management of change. It was found that management of change was completed only after a manual block valve install. Again, those manual valves that were installed after the reboilers were put in place were in a closed position, preventing the pressurized liquid propane that was cooked off, from going anywhere and safely venting off or going somewhere else into the system and allowing the vessel to just overpressure. That initial management of change, when they put them in, one wasn't completed before, which is just not correct. And also, when they actually did one after the fact, when they were installed, it wasn't captured then. It was also found that the MOC did not identify that the reboilers had no pressure safety high protection, again leading to the tragedy that we were discussing. As far as pre-startup review element, it was found during the initial pre-startup that it failed to catch the blocked pressure safety high valves. If they had done a proper pre-startup review and walked down that flow train, it would have been found that not only were the manual block valves closed, but that they needed to do something about possibly locking them open. Also, no pre-startup process for operating equipment. As I mentioned, the reboiler that was brought online that morning that was going to be used to work while the other was shut in for maintenance, it had been down for over a year. And the plant supervisor for that area just kicked it on without any real questions or any further questions or inference into more information about that vessel. He just fired it back on that with no concerns. Moving on, the process hazard analysis element. There were 3 separate PHAs that were completed involving this equipment, and of the 3, it was only actually captured once that these manual block valves could be a problem. When it was actually caught in the very first one, it was checked off as that it was completed and that the manual block valves were locked open. And as we can tell, the CSB found later on that was false. They were actually closed in the closed position. Moving on to the next element, operating procedures. It was found that there was no maintenance schedule for assessing tube fouling. There's no real time frame that they allowed for. Basically, they were just like, it seems like it's bad, we need to do something, but there was no set schedule or anything for that. There's also no procedure for bringing equipment online. Kind of related to the pre-startup review. There's no dedicated procedure. A good procedure would have that pre-startup almost kind of tied together with that pre-startup review to make sure that, well, hey, is it safe to bring this vessel online? Is there any questions we need to be raising before we bring this thing on and make it hot? Also, no operating procedures were for performing the maintenance on the equipment. It kind of ties up to the first thing under this element. There's no dedicated operating procedures for that reboiler saying when maintenance, how often maintenance should be done, how often should they be checking for tubing fouling, and so on. And as you can see on this slide, and this photo shows the reboiler torn to shreds and all the subsequent damage around that area and that part of the unit. Moving on to the next slide. Lessons learned. This incident highlights the importance of details of PSM program implementation. From that, critical details overlooked can quickly lead to significant hazards. As we can see, these guys overlooked some very critical details, and it may have seemed small in the beginning, it led to a bigger problem much later on. The Williams example was obviously overlooked from install and was not a problem for 12 years, and it goes on to show how long something can, one of those secret hidden problems that you don't think is an issue, can be lurking just around the corner. You know, it might hit you today or it might hit you in 12 years from now, as in this case. Another lessons learned: complete safety culture assessment to address safety culture weaknesses. Obviously, there's a significant lackadaisical behavior from the top all the way down to the guys in the field. Obviously, management wasn't doing their part to force the issue of having those guys in the field follow their process safety management programs. And the guys in the field obviously were pretty lackadaisical as well. As obviously, they were bringing equipment online without knowing or checking the contents or the volume of that vessel. If they may have done some more homework that morning, they would have known that that vessel they were bringing on was manually blocked off and had no way of safely depressurizing if it became too hot, or that it was completely full of propane. They didn't know that at the time. Another lessons learned: develop tracking program for safety indicators for continuing improvement. If there was a tracking system already in action, it would have probably caught the incorrectly, quote-unquote, completed item that they had locked open those block valves. In that process hazard analysis, they allegedly caught it, and it was allegedly fixed. But as we can see, looking back now from the CSB report, that was not correct. If they had a tracking program, they could have saved themselves a lot of trouble. And finally, perform PSM program assessments to evaluate their effectiveness on PSM and facility. Poor PSM performance, obvious from the lack of attention to detail and utilization of PSM programs, which led to the Williams Geismar facility incident. And I mean, like we said, it's just been obvious that there was not a real big dedication within the facility, possibly within the company as a whole, working on their within their process safety management system. And they definitely need to work on that and ensure that it's being performed to the right level. And this last page is our references. One was the YouTube video put together by the Chemical Safety Board, and the other was the after the incident report. It was used to all this information. Thank you.